This is The Backstory with Immobile Stephen. It's a balanced, objective, unbiased and disruptive conversation on government and politics. We shine more light on what has not worked and what would make it work. And now, to the finest, personable and engaging host extraordinaire, Immobile Stephen. Tune in.
Good to have you on The Backstory. This is Immobile Stephen, your host on The Backstory. On The Backstory with Immobile Stephen, we like to shine more light on what has not worked and what will make it work, focusing on government and politics with other subtopics like society and culture, science and technology, and also the environment. Today, I have Gerald Schoenewolf, who is a licensed psychoanalyst and a published author. Welcome, and Gerald, to The Backstory with Immobile Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the show. You'll be talking about violence and how we can prevent them. I know you've got a lot of experience in this regard, and I'm looking forward to a great time, and also my audience across the globe. Gerald, what do you know about violence and aggression?
Well, in my book, The Mass Killer, I'll show you a copy of it. So this came out in August 1st. Published by Defiance Press. This book, I did research for 1 year on mass killings, which is the most prominent kind of violence happening, especially in America. In America, there are twice as many mass murders than in any other country. And so I wondered why. Why are we having so many mass killings in America? And people are always saying, oh, it's guns. There's too many guns in America. But actually, guns have been available in America since the beginning. You know, the Second Amendment gave everybody a right to have guns. And so people have always had guns in America, but only in the last few decades have mass killings suddenly erupted. You know, they began in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they mushroomed into the 210s and 220s. At the present time, it seems like we're having a mass killing every other week. Why? It's not guns, it's our culture. American culture is a dysfunctional culture. It's a violent culture. It's a divided culture. You know, you have the militant conservatives, and you have the militant liberals, and they are fighting a war. That war has been going on for a long time, building over the last 100 years or so. You could compare this to a divided family. If you have a divided family where the mother and father are always fighting and they're always trying to prove who's right and who's wrong and who's to blame and who's not to blame, that family is going to be dysfunctional, and the children are going to suffer. And when you have a country that's divided and trying to prove who's right and who's wrong and who's to blame and who isn't, that country is going to suffer. A family has to be united, and a country has to be united. So I trace these mass killings to the dysfunctionalism of our society, which also has to do with dysfunctional families, dysfunctional child rearing. I'm a psychoanalyst, so I am very interested in childhood and parenting and what happens and how children are raised. And I think children are not being raised the way they used to be in America. And this is causing problems. In my book, The Mass Killer, I studied this subject. I realized that this dividedness in America started with the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War happened in the late 1960s, 1970s. we drafted people, students, to go over to Vietnam and fight a war in a foreign country. And that, I mean, before that, we sent soldiers to fight in World War II, and we were seen as heroes. And that kind of got us motivated to think that we are the defenders of freedom. And that, so we sent people over to Vietnam, and the students started protesting. They didn't want to go over there and fight that war in Vietnam. Uh, and and for the first time, there were non-peaceful protests. Before that, America always, for the most part, had peaceful protests. But starting with the Vietnam War, the students, who were mostly liberals, justified violent protests because they said, "Oh, our cause is so great that we're justified in violent protests." And they threw, feces at the police. They urine. They threw rocks. People got killed on different college campuses, and that was the start of non-peaceful protests or riots by the liberals. And then you had the feminist movement, you had the black rights movement, you had the gay movement, and lately you've had the transgender movement. All of them have been bullying movements. We have had a revolution in this country, and the laws and values have changed to a great extent. And the change in values have not only happened in America, but they've influenced the whole Western world to do the same thing. And it has led to chaos. And so I see the mass murders as a symptom of that chaos of a divided culture. I studied.
Okay, then go ahead.
Okay, should I continue?
You can.
Okay, so I studied 6 case histories in my book of mass murderers because I wanted to get to know them intimately. I wanted to get to know their psychology. I studied some of the most famous mass murderers. They include Adam Lanza of Connecticut, who shot up an elementary school and killed 27 elementary students. Stephen Paddock, who shot 60-something people from a hotel window in Nevada. Sung Hyu Cho, who at Virginia Tech shot up, 20-something students, went crazy. James Oliver Huberty, George Hennard, Salvador Ramos. He was the last one in Texas who shot up a school in Uvalde, Texas. All of these are noted mass killers, and I delved deeply into all the research that was available about them online. And I came up with some I think findings about them that where they all had things in common. They all had very traumatic childhoods to start with. Let's look at the Korean boy who killed 27 people at Virginia Tech. He was born in South Korea. His mother was matched with his father. She didn't want to marry this man. She was an educated woman, and she begged her father not to match her up with this man. But it was an arranged marriage, and she was forced to marry this blue collar man, who she just loathed. And so they got married. It was a very dysfunctional family in Korea. They lived in this small rural town in South Korea. And soon after, when he was like 7 years old or so, they moved to America. And he had to learn a whole new language, English, and he was put into elementary schools that he didn't fit into. He was already by that time very disturbed. People he went to psychiatrists, and they found that he had a form of autism. Now, there are many theories about autism over the years, and there's no theory that's been totally accepted. My theory about autism, and this is based on research about postpartum depression, they have found that there is a link between mothers who suffer from postpartum depression and autism. Well, they found a link between postpartum depression and developmental arrests. Children who have mothers who had postpartum depression do not fare well. Mothers who have this kind of depression do not pick up their babies. They lie in bed and they're angry and they sleep all day. If they do pick up their baby, it's in an angry way because they resent the baby. They resent that they had to be a mother. They feel that their father, that their husband, they usually hate their husband. There's a lot of anger and stuff like that going on. And so that was this Korean boy was born in this kind of situation. So he was diagnosed with a kind of autism, and by the time he was in America, he didn't relate to other students. He didn't relate to teachers. His parents, who were very religious, took him to church and tried to get them to perform an exorcism because they thought that he was possessed by the devil. But that never came to be. By the time he got to Virginia Tech, he was like probably schizophrenic. He had an imaginary friend that he talked about. He was a loner, and he just could not get along with anybody. He tried to approach some women there, but he approached them in a totally awkward way. And one woman, he suddenly appeared in her dorm room, and he had given himself a name, sort of like Nobody. He had a name. He named himself Nobody. I'm paraphrasing, was something like that. And he said, "Here, I'm Nobody. How are you? I would like to go out with you." And she was, of course, freaked out and called the campus police. So this guy told many people that he was angry and he planned on killing a lot of students. He didn't keep it a secret. People on his roommates, they all knew he was crazy. One roommate even tried to call the police and tell them about him, but the police dismissed it and said, "Oh, he's probably just going through a phase." And they didn't do anything. Now, he, like other mass murderers, he really kept up with mass murderers. He had a file in his room where he kept up with. He had all the mass murderers, how many people they killed, what happened to them, what kind of publicity they got afterwards. He thought they were all heroes, and so he and the other mass murderers were all copycats. They saw mass murder as a final way to express their rage.
Oh, really? Now, Gerald, so in all of these analysis, how do you think the social situation influences aggression?
What's that?
In all of the analysis you've put down here, how do you think that the social situation influences aggression?
I'm having a little trouble understanding your accent.
The question is, how do you have penned down a profound analysis to the audience? The question I'm asking is, how do you think the social situation influences aggression?
How do I think the social situation in America causes aggression.
Yeah.
Well, because you see, the social situation in America is full of aggression right now. It might not be, people may not be shooting each other, although that happens a lot. You know, you hear about people, there's a knock on somebody's door, they open it, it's somebody they didn't expect, so they shoot the person. There's this kind of stuff going on. But what I'm saying is that this divisive behavior in America causes people to be at each other's faces. I mean, it's violent language, it's hateful language. It's, you know, you have militant feminists talking about toxic masculinity, for example. For years, you know, there's been this kind of talk about toxic femininity and how men do this and men do that. For thousands of years, men have done this. And men grow up in this society and they can't talk. These mass murderers are all people who internalize their anger. This is one of the things mass murderers all have in common. They are unable to express their pent-up feelings. It's just repressed until it explodes. And the violence in culture, the hatred, the hatred towards men that is expressed by feminists, calling males toxic, calling them sexist, calling them this and that. This is wearing on males who grow up in America. It's wearing on them. They can't express anything about it because if they do, they're called sexist. So they have to keep their mouths shut. And they are. So this has been going on for many years, and I think that it has had a very it causes them to become violent because that's the only way they can express themselves.
Now, Gerald, in all of this, what are some of the policies, the agenda setting the government of the day needs to be addressing at this time?
Well, I think that unfortunately, it's a very complicated situation. I mean, you know, the liberals say, well, we gotta control guns, you know, but that's simple. That's not going to do it. We need to have we need to take a good look at what's happening in our society. This divisiveness, we have to find a way to bring America together, to unify America. It might require some kind of leader. I've recently been watching Vivek Ramaswamy, I think is his name. He's running as a Republican. He seems to be a leader that could unite the country. But it's going to take somebody like that to unify the country. I think we need to really take a good look at child rearing, at how we're raising our children. I think these days Americans are not conscientious about raising children. I mean, I think a lot of times politics affects the way parents are raising their children. You know, some people are raising their children to hate white people. You know, just to say, okay, well, white people have killed Indians, white people have done this, white people have been, they try to make white people out to be the international culprit. And I think that's a very destructive trend, because if you want to have a unified society, nobody in the culture can be scapegoated, nobody. So all of those things are causing violence.
Thanks so much, Gerald, for sharing your thoughts on the show. Now, do you think there's any final solution to the mass killings and also genocide in this day and age that we find ourselves?
Well, as you know, as I just said, I think that there's no simple solution. It's a complex solution. Uh, and it has to do with, unifying cultures, not just America, but I think places in other countries have to be unified as well. Um, Unification, and returning to values that we started out with. We started out with liberal values, but these were workable values: live and let live, pursuit of pleasure, and also taking responsibility for who we are, and for participating as citizens in a country. It's just it's a whole process of restoring values that work, values that are based not on political slogans, but are based on uh, scientific principles.
Gerald, thank you once again for that information you just shared with us. Do you have any projects, interesting information that you'd like to share with the audience of the backstory?
Well, I hope people will buy this book. I'll show you it again. I think this book will have a lot to say if people read it. I think it has a lot to say about the violence in the world and the chaos, because it seems to me that the world right now is headed towards maybe another world war. It just seems to me the world is getting more and more unstable every year, and it seems like the only way human beings know how to take care of their feelings is to have a war every now and then. History is full of wars. That's and the hardest thing for humans to do is to resolve things in a peaceful way. But that's what that humans have to learn. I also wrote another book called Lizzie, which is the story of Lizzie Borden. This is also about violence. It's about a woman who axed her two parents to death. It was a very shocking thing that happened in New England. This is another book where I wrote. It's kind of a biographical novel where I show how Lizzie was molested by her father when she was 5 years old, and that really led to all that happened afterwards, to her axe murders. And I think that's a very interesting book. I did a lot of research for that. That has a lot to say about violence as well.
Absolutely. Like to share your social media handles on your website.
What's that?
Like to share your social media handles on your website.
Sure.
Can you go ahead?
You want me to say some of my social media?
Yes, on your website to the audience.
How do I do that?
No, you can say it how to them. They are listening.
Well, if you want to find out more about me, you can go. I have a website called drschoenewolf.com, and that has I've written 30 books, so that lists all of my books. I was writing and getting published by regular publishers until about late 1980. Then I started getting canceled because I was critical of feminism. I got some really horrendous reviews for some of the books I wrote, that I was a sexist and I was this and that. And I think, the publishing industry right now, the mainstream industry, is very much influenced by feminism. So I'm canceled, and I've had to publish most of my books myself on Amazon since then. Now, as I said, I have my own website. I also have a website called Living Center Press .us, US, that lists a lot of my books, including The Mass Killer. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, and other places like that.
Thanks so much, Gerald Schoenewolf, for sharing your thoughts on today's show. I really appreciate your time. So also my audience. Share your thoughts and your expertise on violence and how to prevent them. I wish you best of luck in all the projects that you're embarked upon, Gerald.
Thank you so much for having me. It was nice meeting you and being on your show.
Thank you so much once again. If you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of The Backstory with Omobole Stephen, you can catch up on any cross promotion platforms or any distribution platforms online, and do have a great time listening to experts and professionals share their thoughts on topics and subjects on the government and politics. Till I come your way, I really need you to stay safe. I talk to you soon.
Okay.